South Africa is observing Disability Rights Awareness Month, and the theme this year is empowering persons with disabilities through resourceful, sustainable and safe environments. But even though we are more than 2 decades into our democracy, many people living with disabilities are still struggling with access to public transport, education and jobs. For more on this, we're joined this morning by Phuti Mabelebele from the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. Phuti, thanks very much indeed for coming on. It's great to talk to you this morning. And I suppose, as we reflect on how far we've come on this month, insofar as catering for people with disabilities is concerned, where do you think the gaps still lie?
Thank you very much, and good morning to all the viewers and listeners. There are gaps as we are reflecting on the disability right during this Disability Rights Awareness Month, which started yesterday on the 3rd of November to the 3rd of December, which is an awareness month whereby we are showcasing challenges, gaps, interventions and achievements that government, in terms of the commitments we have made in line with the MTSF, have undertaken so far. There are indeed gaps, as much as there are indeed some achievements in some areas in terms of disability inclusion, in line with the commitments that we have made. And indeed, we are reflecting as government. That means that all national departments, provincial departments, and also local sphere of government will be showcasing some of those particular gaps, but also reflecting on the interventions that are needed to actually progress forward the transformation agenda to uphold the rights of persons with disabilities.
Phuti, I want you to give us more sort of tangible, practical examples of where the gaps do lie, insofar as our society catering in general for people with disabilities, keeping in mind that not all disabilities are visible either. But, for example, when it comes to something like tourism, it's in our favor, right, to ensure that we are catering to the broader population. It means that people from all sectors can come and enjoy our country and have faith that the necessary infrastructure will be there to help them do that. Just as one example.
Barriers to accessibility for and by persons with disabilities lies largely in a number of areas. We have got the one primary barrier, which is behavioral barriers by society generally, which has to do with attitudes of people. And this is where you find that perpetuation of stigma lies, especially in terms of acceptance and ensuring that the social cohesion in terms of the different disabilities that are there. That's barrier number one. The barriers that are limitations to access for persons with disabilities have got to do with, for instance, behavioral behaviors, and these are where you find attitudinal barriers, which perpetuate stigmas for discrimination by and for persons with disabilities. And that takes place from the home environment to the community and in society, and flows into the workplaces and also in the economic spaces where they're supposed to be participating. Secondly, we also have barriers that have to do with universal design and access. These are physical barriers, for instance, the built environment where persons with disabilities are still not able to access particular facilities in the manner that they should be. For example, you gave a clear example of issues of transport, issues of accessibility to transport, to buildings, and so forth. Another barrier that exists is in relation to communication challenges, where, for instance, persons with disabilities still are not able to access fully information, and that is the main and major challenge, for instance, and hence we are finalizing the processes towards us now announcing the South African Sign Language as a 12th official language to deal with the barrier for persons with hearing impairments. And that's not just the only communication barrier. I'm just citing an example for hearing impairments. But also you have recently seen the court judgment with regard to the accessibility on issues around the Copyright Act, which is now about persons who are blind. So those kind of barriers still exist, and that's what, as a society, as government, both public and private sector, we need to be dealing with to ensure that we are prepared and we effectively ensure that the accessible barriers are dismantled, so that persons with disabilities can participate in society wholly.
Yeah, absolutely. Phuti,
yes.
I mean, the point that you're making there is, you know, persons with disabilities shouldn't have to, for example, call ahead to a building or call ahead to an event to ensure that their needs are being catered to.
It's true. In actual fact, the reason why I always mention that we talk about universal design and access, which is just not meant for persons with disabilities, it's meant for all people, including pregnant women, for instance, and older women and older men, and so forth. For instance, when we build ramps in our buildings, which have got to do with accessibility for persons on wheelchairs, most of the users of ramps are women, are actually children, are actually older persons, and so forth. So hence we're talking about universal design. We must remember that barriers to accessibility are perpetuated by people, and disability is perpetuated by people generally, and therefore it's not that persons with disabilities can't be accommodated. And hence we continue to raise awareness and ensure that people are informed about the different disabilities and how best to actually ensure that barriers to access are dismantled. For instance, the critical barrier, even in homes, which has to do with acceptance and stigmatization, which is a very serious barrier, is where if we learn to accept and have more information and knowledge about how to deal with different disabilities, we'll be able to dismantle attitudinal barriers. And as a result, even those that have responsibility to ensure that certain measures are put in place to ensure full accessibility, whether in workplaces, whether in built environments like hotels, like shopping centers, buildings, to access service